Hey Brickmaniacs, welcome back to another Designer Studio episode. Today we're taking a little bit of a throwback here, taking a closer look at the Sikorsky HH-3E Jolly Green Giant designed by George Hicks. And well, we don't have them in studio very often, so we had to take advantage. Plus, this was an incredibly popular build when it first came out. Actually, it was one of the ones that when we first made the SH, we were like, hey, what are you going to do the Jolly Green? And we're like, hold on, we're getting to it. Everything's around the corner now. But this, an excellent build, an awesome crew. So we're going to have Landon in to join George in a little bit to talk about this epic crew. But for now, let's go over the build, kind of a mixture of stickers and printing. But this was attempt number 2. You had a chance to go back and refine some things, but also some new difficulties because obviously it's not an exact replica.
Yes, originally I built a HH-3E Jolly Green Giant, and it was a little smaller scale. It was only 6 wide, and when we started doing the Sikorsky Sea King S61 family, I pitched this to Dan. He said, well, yeah, it's been a popular request. I'm like, well, I'm going to give it a shot. So really happy with how this one turned out. Would really have liked to done olive green instead of the bright green.
Sure.
But the parts library, it just isn't
Not
there.
available, yeah.
And looking at the actual Jolly Green at the United States Air Force Museum at Wright-Patt in Dayton, Ohio, it's got a newer paint scheme from when they restored it, and it looked closer to this green. So I'm like, well, we're gonna stick with that.
Okay.
So was really pleased how it turned out. Went back and forth several times trying to get the camo pattern just right with the available parts, especially the tiles, and still try to keep the strength in it. So I think it turned out pretty good. I know several people that have bought it have reached out to me. They're just ecstatic that Brickmania finally did a Jolly Green Giant.
Well, it's definitely one of those builds that comes with just kind of that eye test of like, oh, I wonder how they pulled that off, because you know the interior is big and empty. You need room for your crew. You've got a lot of greebles and everything going on in there, and yet it's a helicopter. You want to be able to pick it up and swoosh it around.
Yeah.
So where were you kind of in that, man, not only do I need to up the scale of this thing, but I got to make sure I can fit this crew and everything else going on in here?
Yeah, originally I was going to try to do it studs up, and then it occupied too much space, and then the width got a little crazy, so we can pop the roof off.
Yeah, I was going to say, take it apart.
I think.
Because that's just crazy. I mean, that's literally like you pop the roof off this thing and it is a play set on the interior. Like it really, really is.
Yeah, so we got some stretchers in there for the PJs to pick up any wounded pilots or down guys. The old infamous stainless steel igloo cooler, which I believe they still carry an igloo cooler in the new Jolly Green Giant, the Blackhawks, or whatever. Yeah. But yeah, it's just a lot of bracket construction to get the plates on the side.
And then where do you look to have your strength points in something like that, where you know you've got to keep, because obviously you've got to support these heavy wings as well.
Yeah, and there's a lot of plates that go side to side down here that run all the way through to help keep the helicopter sturdy and also support itself under its own weight. And then that's one of the biggest reasons here, because on the Sea King, this comes to a point, there's no ramp. The Air Force wanted their own version of the S61, so they requested a ramp, and then the landing gear to be moved to the back, and extra fuel storage. So, and then to make it an HH-3, they put the fuel boom on for longer durations. So definitely with that open space back here, on the Sea King, it's all sandwiched together. So during the construction, I had to kind of sandwich everything up top here, and you can't easily remove this back section, which there's really no need to.
Especially if you sacrifice the access to that main portion, you know what I mean, to get that. It's like that's where people want to play.
I wanted to keep the main portion available so you could put your door gunners here. And then, the guys are kind of a pain to get in and out of the cockpit, but you build them in there or you leave them out.
Yeah.
Or you can get them in and out.
I mean, that's a fairly reasonable option, though, with something where you know that the minifigure does not necessarily lend itself to a decent 1/35th scale of something like this, so you have to take some liberties, shall we say, to make sure that you can fit your minifig pilots into your fairly accurate build. Because sometimes you have to choose, like, do you want something that is the exact 1/35th scale replication of the vehicle itself, or do you want something that you can put minifig pilots in? Because you can't have both.
Play with it. So, but I mean, it obviously is swooshable, and landing gear do tuck away. And front one you just got to cheat on. So, but I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. And I wanted to keep the winch assembly in there, and I'm like, well, I can't quite do what I did on the Sea King, so I got creative, and you can just twisted up with the main rotor
so
mast without
slick.
the rotor spinning around.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I know I'm probably not the first one to do that, but I'm pretty happy with how it turned out.
Yeah, which, I mean, I
So-
think, Dan's even touched on that point before, is like, yeah, sometimes the technique can exist out there,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean that I didn't discover it on my own, because I
Yeah.
had a breakthrough on during the weekend and was like, yay!
I'm sure it was done by somebody else at one point, but I had never seen it, so
Happy to have had figured that out. Plus,
I was ecstatic to figure that out, because I'm like, okay, we're not submitting this model if I don't have any way to pick up a down pilot.
well, and clean is one thing. Keeping that winch integrated into the build is one thing, but then remaining the functionality of it, being able to actually deploy it and whatnot, that's the cool part. Bring it back up.
Yeah.
That's the fun playability factor that you want.
I was pretty pleased with how this turned out,
Yeah.
and I'm hoping to maybe make some other variants of it at some point.
Well, the Vietnam era aircraft has only been increasing in popularity, so that'll be exciting to see as it continues to grow moving forward. Otherwise, what do you think? Should we bring in Landon and talk a little bit
Yeah,
about these
let's
figures?
talk about these figures, because
It's a heck of a crew.
heck of a crew, and one of them is exclusive to the set. No matter how many times you ask if we could do it individually.
All right, here we have a decked out crew. Where do you want me to begin with these guys? The chicken plates, we got tons of 3D printing.
Yeah, I'd say let's talk about the chicken plates.
Chicken plates, okay. Let's go over this 3D printed stuff. Two variants for this kit. One's for the crew in the back, and then we got one for the pilot, so there's no back on that chicken plate. So chicken plate, it's like a bulletproof, bullet-resistant armor. And I think ceramic is my understanding. There's different variants, I think, depending.
Yeah, I think depending on what year of the conflict, may have been
Yeah.
some steel plate ones,
Right.
may have been ceramic, but I'm assuming since it says do not drop, we're going to go with ceramic.
Right. I mean,
So-
there's some earlier ones that didn't say do not drop.
Yeah.
And you got to speculate. It had to have been dropped a few times.
Do not shoot.
Enough to make a sign, a stencil for these things. So that's
What-
an interesting.
Somebody once told me it's not a rule unless there's a sign.
That's
So-
true. Yeah. So previous ones you could drop it as much as you want. Later ones, you can't. You're not allowed to. It's bad. That's I don't know. So yeah, again, yeah, this one back of the pilot, some sit down nice interfaces with the.
Yeah, so they sit fairly well in the seats in the cockpit without the back.
Right.
So, and you don't have to take them off. You can leave them on.
Right.
Or you can take them off and put them in there. Your choice.
Right.
We don't judge.
There is a ton of details on these guys. It's a crew. They're wearing similar base uniforms, if not the same. It's got the jumpsuit, but I did manage to try to get in as much variety as possible within the guys. So, starting with this guy, I'm liking the suspenders. That's part of the I think Alice pack system, and that integrated with that pistol belt. You'd see some infield modifications. So this guy, he's got some leather ammunition, like a bullet and a bandolier,
Yeah.
like, stitched right onto that pistol belt, which I had a photograph that I tracked down of that one. And he's got his pistol holster in the front there as well. A lot of character on this. Just smoke grenades, marking the landing zone or wherever. I saw a bunch of smoke grenades on the crew there, and then a grenade as well. So, combat boot with the knife on the side. Just a ton of stuff that when you first think about a pilot, it's just like, oh, he's got this simple uniform, but there's really a lot of different pieces that they can kind of customize.
Yeah, I mean, they had to be prepared for the event. Maybe they went down.
Right,
So
exactly.
they had to survive until another one of these could get out there to them.
Exactly.
So, I mean, nobody ever wants to have to go through that. But yeah,
Right.
you yourself may be the one that's in need to call in Jolly Green Combat Search and Rescue support. So, yeah, the Alice webbing on there is fantastic. How you managed to get all that detail
Yeah, thank
in
you.
such a small little band. And then I really like the flight wings and the U.S. Air Force
Yeah.
tag.
It's a nice
That was
pop-up
one of those
color.
things. I'm like, man, I really hope that that shows through, especially blue on olive green, and it turned out fantastic.
Good, thank you. Yeah, it was. I was happy with how these guys were printing. Another pistol belt here, and so I try as best I can to keep artwork. So the torso and the legs, they're two separate parts, obviously.
Yeah.
And classic Lego, they very rarely would ever have any artwork go
Below
across the line.
Yep.
Because then if you're wanting to customize it kind of limits you to, you have to use this torso, you have to use legs. I try to kind of actually stay in that vein as much as possible.
Yeah.
I like giving the option for customization, but sometimes a lower belt placement just looks more like accurate,
Realistic
you know?
to me. Yeah.
You know, thinking about like these are this holster here. From what I could tell, it was made like in country, just like a individual private purchase.
Yeah.
It's a neat looking holster again with that the ammunition pockets there, little bandolier across the back, kind of got that Western look to it. So again, really cool character to see all this stuff in field. And then the final guy, did we go over him already? Oh, I don't know.
No.
This
And
will be
also, I believe this was a new 3D printed helmet
oh, right on.
for this kit because it was a different. I'd have to go back and look, but yeah, they changed helmets variations several
Yeah.
times. One was too bulky and awkward and wasn't very comfortable, so they kind of slimmed it up and gave it a little more protection.
Right.
Can't remember the number off the top of my head.
That's cool to see with 3D printing that we can kind of get every single
Yeah.
variant. Whereas if we're dealing with just Lego, it's obviously a more limited selection.
We have this helmet and this helmet, and that's all you
Right,
get.
right. And even in injection molding, we're someday, we're moving towards that maybe in the future to have some options that are injection molded, maybe down the road. But it is nice to be able to prototype stuff in 3D with our 3D printers, and the quality is like in hand, it's I think on par with a lot of Lego elements. So
Yeah,
it's come a long way.
Pretty fantastic stuff.
And it's like only getting better, so I'm excited to see where this all goes. Yeah, this final guy, he's also got the holster on the side. So these guys, ready for a little bit of close range combat if need be. Ideally, they want to keep this thing flying though. So crew, and then we have this guy here, special request. He is, what is the actual, I haven't seen this guy in a long time actually, so what was the request?
PJ.
Okay.
Para-rescue jumper.
Okay.
So,
I did all this research and now it's in one ear.
I think the biggest request was mainly just the red beret.
Sure.
So to kind of separate him from the rest of the guys.
Right.
But obviously his loadout is completely different than
Yeah.
the flight crew.
So this guy, he's one of the more interesting, I think, loadouts here. He's got that ERDL camo. That's kind of like a predecessor to Woodland. A little bit more kind of blurry edges, smaller blotches, camo blotches. It's a really cool, camo pattern, one of my favorites. And what else? So he's got this is actually interesting. These are World War II pouches that they still had them in. These guys would have access to equipment depots that, they're able to use just, weird stuff or old stuff.
Yeah.
But sometimes that old stuff it works better.
Hey, if it works, it works.
Yeah, if you have new equipment, like new weapons, sometimes the ammunition doesn't fit into the old, or they don't have access to the new pouches to go with the new equipment always. Like I've seen them use canteen covers as ammunition storage because they just didn't have access to the pouches. So using the older World War II stuff, that seemed to, I'd see that occasionally. Special harness that he's wearing, it's like like 5-point harness.
Yeah, I'd say mainly for when they're coming back up
Right.
on the winch, gives them a little more support because typically they're gonna put the down pilot on there first, and then sometimes they may have to be with them, so just another place to hook onto.
Right. And you have these really chunky like D-ring or what are they called? They're like
Carabiners?
Yeah, carabiners. But it's a specific military issued one. You can get them on eBay for a couple bucks now. But they're these just really chunky. I think they're aluminum, something like that. And that's again like you can get like another extraction point on here. But yeah, this harness is specific to this guy and this branch, and it's you see it in video games. This guy's actually like. There's some video games out there that actually like portray these guys, and there's some iconic loadouts, but they're also based off the real thing in real life. I was like, oh, I recognize that from this video game, but then it's like, oh, actually, they're getting
actually
it from a
use
real
it.
thing
Yeah.
too. So it's interesting to see it kind of come full circle like this. Combat knife on the side, just the standard jungle boots of the era, and we have a perfect caliber M16 with that sling there. That sling's included?
Slings included.
That's awesome.
So, yep, say the PJ's kit exclusive. So
Yes.
if you want a Vietnam era PJ,
Now's your chance.
last I checked, there were still 2 of these online.
Ooh.
So
They're gonna go. They're gonna go quick.
I'm sure there'll be a restock, but get them while you can, because you never know. Some of these green parts are kind of hard to find.
Yeah.
So dark green's becoming more popular, thankfully. But I may have dried up the collection
no.
with some other builds,
It'll
personal
come back.
builds
Oh.
of my own. So
You're cleaning things out.
yeah,
I see what's going on. You're buying all the parts up, and
I wouldn't do that.
you're gaming the system,
Nah,
man.
no. Who would do that?
Yeah. It was a lot of fun to design the crew.
I think of all the Sikorsky S61 variants, this is probably the most favorite crew.
Awesome, yeah.
And then the Apollo
Yeah.
old 66 is probably the second. So
It
Figs-
is interesting to
figs
see the variety between totally different. But,
yeah, say everybody loves the kits, but I think the figs really lend to the purchase. Like,
Sure.
oh, I really want that because of the figs. So
I-
at least that's how I am most times.
It's fun getting to make these kits just kind of as cool of
Yeah.
a package as possible. So I'd like to think that it's just a nice addition to an awesome model. So
Definitely.
taking everything to the next level.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's continue to do that. So
Right on. That's all I got. You got
Nope.
anything else?
nope. Good
Cool.
seeing you, man.
Nice seeing you too.
All right.
All right. Thanks for joining us, guys.
We'll see you guys.